Howdy, how is everybody? So I'm going to deviate from my script some today. A little bit about rodeo, which is not on any of my slides, but I don't want to steal any of Chris Bowman's thunder, but I will get into the economics of it and how it and the rodeo system in Texas impact each of the major cities. So if we take a look at Texas, and by the way, when I get to the city slides and I'm talking about winners and losers, don't get offended if you're from one of the loser cities. I'm just big on Texas, and that is my official disclaimer and apology. But there's a lot going on here. I am not originally from Texas. My father's family is from Texas. My mother's family is from Savannah, Georgia, and I was born on an Army base in Georgia called Fort Benning, and grew up all over the world. So I grew up living in Germany, in Japan, Puerto Rico, Cameroon. So we moved around a good bit, Saigon, before it changed. And then I went in the Army. So thank y'all for paying for my college and my grad school. Y'all will be paying for it for a long time with the level of national debt. So those are some things that we can address. If you want to talk about any of that stuff after this, we can go into a lot of detail and weeds on the economy, on the debt, or on military and where we are as a country. But I'm going to start with Texas. So the triangle, do y'all know what the triangle is? The triangle, if you take a dot and you put one in the Houston city center and you put one in the city center of San Antonio, and then you run it up to the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which is somewhere around Grapevine, about where Texas Stadium is up there. That's the triangle. The triangle is expected to double in population between 2033 and 2045. That's actually been moved up, but it's not on official statistics yet, but they expect that doubling between 2033 and 2040 now. So the population, 60% of the population of Texas is in that triangle. So if that doubles, Texas will be larger than the state of California population-wise, probably around 2033. That changes a lot on the map. That changes electoral votes, it changes business movement, it changes everything for the state of Texas. It changes real estate prices inside the triangle. Right now, if you go towards Austin, there's a little town called Bastrop. Bastrop is growing at a huge pace, and so is a little bitty place called Smithville, which 5 years ago, Smithville had a population of 630, and now Smithville is around 5,800, and that's expected to go to 30,000 in the next 2 years based on housing permits and the movement of Tesla and some other corporate headquarters that are coming there in plants. So we're seeing a shift all inside the triangle. This impacts Houston, San Antonio, and Austin the most, but it impacts all of those small towns in the middle in the eastern side of the hill country. The good thing about the triangle has more water. As you get west of the interstate that divides, that goes between Austin and San Antonio, as you get west of 35, you start running out of water really quickly. San Antonio has water problems. Austin has water problems. Houston doesn't. Our water problems are sometimes we have too much, and it tends to get about this high. They don't have that problem if you go west of that interstate. So that growth that's going to occur in the triangle is going to tend to lead to the east side because of water permitting and water restrictions. Dr. Belko is a big researcher on water, and we talk about water a good bit. Houston is currently the world's most diverse city, 7th year in a row. Just a matter of fact. And as a diverse city, we have fewer problems than a lot of cities worldwide that can't seem to get along. Houston, no one cares where you're from in Houston. No one cares what you do in Houston. They just care that you're here, you want to do something, and you're trying to make a better life. There are other cities in the country you go to, and they're still divided along lines that were set 100 years ago. Houston doesn't have that problem. So by 2035, we'll have a higher population than California, maybe sooner. Texas, by business weighting, is the 8th largest economy in the world. We are probably going to be the 7th largest economy in the next 2 years. The estimates now on Wall Street are 2029, so that's effectively three and a half years away from us, but I think it's going to be a little sooner. Texas produces 2.48 trillion in economic impact. That should be 2.75 trillion by 27. It's a huge economy. There's a lot of growth that's going on. We'll go through some of the business sectors that are seeing the highest, the 20 top critical job shortage and critical mass shortage where we need people working. Texas has 500,000 Americans and citizens moving here every single year, on average. Houston, if you just take a look at job growth, in the last, you take 23, Houston produced 49,500 new jobs, 61,600 new jobs in 24. In fiscal year 25, the estimates aren't really complete yet, but they're going to be above 40,000, even when there was shrinkage in a lot of job markets around the country. And that's a huge number. So Houston, even if you look at other Texas cities, is growing by the fastest need for jobs in critical infrastructure, jobs in research, biomedical. We've now got the largest medical complex in the world in Houston. So let's see. Houston's growth in 25, our estimates on the banking side, is 2.2% growth. Most cities had negative growth last year. $697 billion in economic production for the Houston Metroplex. $725 billion is estimated for 26, with a growth pattern of 62,000 new jobs. So we're expecting good things for our market. I'm not trying to say you should stay here instead of move to other cities when you graduate, but maybe I'm saying it. So we're going to take a look. This is where I get into growth, and I'm going to say winners and losers. Doesn't mean the cities on the business jobs leaving is a loser town, but whatever. So if you take a look at business jobs and growth, this is by percentages, not by numbers. It's just by percentages. So Raleigh, San Antonio, Dallas, Nashville, Miami, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, Jacksonville, Midland, Beaumont, Tyler. So if you take that number, and those are the top ones in the country, how many are from Texas? Now you take a look on the other side. Memphis, San Francisco, Los Angeles, El Centro, Kansas City, Fresno, Memphis, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York. I did put the negative job loss in New York up there just as a number, just because I'm glad to see us winning. So, but again, these are by percentages. So New York wasn't the top percentage job loser, but if you look at the actual numbers and the statistics, they're the highest number loser. And a lot of those are in the finance and investment banking market because they're moving to other places. Goldman Sachs, and I'll go into some of these. JP Morgan now has more employees in the state of Texas than it does New York. Not just New York City, all of New York. They're still headquartered there, but their new operational offices in Dallas look an awful lot like a future corporate headquarters to me if you go tour the site. It really doesn't look like, even though they just built a $2 billion building in New York, they may not really be planning to occupy that for too many more years. Goldman Sachs has largely moved all of their executives to Florida to avoid taxation and to avoid some of the regulatory oversight that is coming down from New York. Florida and Texas are leading in business-friendly climates. Tennessee is a close third. And then the Carolinas, North and South Carolina, they're kind of in there. I think if you're somebody here has been to Charleston recently, there's a quality of life difference. So South and North Carolina are beautiful states, probably some of the most beautiful in the country. And so most of the people that are moving there are probably planning to retire there. But if you're looking for jobs, you want to be in Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Miami, or Jacksonville, or Nashville. Those are your 8 job growth markets. I'm sorry. I'm a little slow on my slide changes. So these are new markets that are opening in the state of Texas. So we're going to go through the Dallas stock market on a subsequent slide, so I'm not going to go to that one yet. But we are now first place in private capital. There's more private capital coming to Texas than any other state in the union, and there's more private capital coming to Texas than any other country in the world. That's a really good sign for what's going to happen. We're going to have a whole list of job growth areas and capital growth areas, but biomedical, biotech, AI, quantum computing, data centers, there's a lot of those that are impacted directly by Houston, Dallas, and Austin. Some degree San Antonio in that, some degree Tyler. Has anyone ever been to Tyler? Show of hands. Okay. If you get a chance, drive through Tyler. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the state of Texas. They had a big Goodyear and Cooper tire and rubber plant shut down about 15 years ago. Destroyed the town. Jobs went away. A lot of people were expecting the town to die. They have now become Texas Center for AI research. Don't ask me how they did it, but they put it together. They got a great community college trade school set up. They started building electricians and electrical systems management engineers. They decided they liked the area. They stayed. They started forming new startup companies. They used an incubator out of Dallas. And now they're becoming a major research center. I expect to see great things from them. It's one of those turnarounds where a lot of cities just give up, and they did not. So got to hand it to them. State Depository for minerals, gems. Have any of y'all heard about this? The new State Depository for bullion and precious metals. It's been open a few years. We're going to go through it on the next slide in a lot of detail. EB-4 visa applications. Texas is first. We have the highest critical shortage of engineering, research, data research, and computing engineering needs. So we have the most applications for people to move here. And I think that means that we're going to have the most jobs there. Foreign investment. We are second place. But I'm going to have to add that New York beat us by less than 1%. Next year we'll beat them. 26 will be our year. We'll be first in foreign investment in the state of Texas. We are 7 of the top 10 growth cities in the U.S. If you go out to 25, we have 16. That's a pretty dynamic number when you look at one state controlling over half of the growth in jobs, over half of the growth in new development, over half of building starts, housing starts, new construction. If you go to any major city, you're going to see sky cranes and you're going to see everything being built if you go in Texas. If you go in, there's a lot of cities, and some will make our list, that buildings are being torn down and not being replaced. So we're in good state. So this is the state depository. And we'll get into a little bit of detail on why this is important. So we had a state comptroller. He's now the chancellor at Texas A&M. Name's Glenn Hegar. He created a new depository for bullion, gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, precious metals. But he also built the rules so that we would be able to add gemstones, mineral interest, intellectual property rights, oil and gas rights, and digitalized state currency. So he was thinking ahead. This building, the complex, is actually in Leander, Texas. Leander is just about 10 minutes out of Austin. He put it together under the laws that allow the state to have its own National Guard and State Guard. The reason he did that is he made it a Texas depository that is not part of the Federal Reserve System. I'm a banker. I work in the Federal Reserve System. It is what it is. But we are the first state to have its own crypto reserve and the first state to have its own or its own statewide depository for precious metals. And the biggest two pieces in there, if you look forward, are intellectual property and abstract mineral rights. So what they're doing is they're setting it up. If economies start to or continue on the pathway towards digital currency. Right now, the Fed released a digital currency last year. They offered it to the top 20 banks in the US. Some of them turned it down, some of them took it up. Not that many people are using it yet. It's still in the infancy stage. But is everybody familiar with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Dogecoin, some of the other stuff that's out there? Well, what's that? So there's now, I guess the president is starting to set up a crypto reserve. The Texas state approved a cryptocurrency reserve 4 years ago. So we actually have a crypto reserve within the state budget that they're funding with an additional $5 million a year. It's not a lot of money as far as Texas goes, but it's a start. We're the only state currently doing it. What this was set up as is people can deposit hard assets that they have, gold, silver, palladium, platinum, other minerals, interest in minerals, and then in the future they'll be able to deposit intellectual property, royalties, things that they have, and they can monetize those within the state and have a digital currency that's usable within the state. There's something in the supremacy clause, which is a constitutional issue. States can't issue their own currency anymore, can't issue their own paper money. But there's no restrictions in that to digital currency. So what the state has done is it has created a pathway for businesses that are doing intrastate business inside the bounds of Texas to digitalize hard assets that they have for use in lending or on either side of the transaction, whether they're loaning or whether they're receiving the loan, or whether they're collateralizing assets and using an in-state digital currency with other in-state businesses that recognize that digital lending currency with no transaction fee and no sales tax. So while it's still in the infancy stage right now, and it doesn't make a huge difference on any of us in this room, in 15 to 20 years, this could be a primary or a secondary pathway for businesses to grow without using the Federal Reserve banking system or without using separate capital and lending groups. They will be able to borrow through a digitalized currency with hard assets. That's getting into the weeds on banking a little bit, but what we're looking at is a whole new revolution in the way things are collateralized. A lot of people who are big Bitcoin believers, say it's a more stabilized currency than the dollar. Well, not yet. It's not there yet. It's got a ways to go. If you take a look at movements in all of the cryptos versus movements in lending interest rates and asset collateralization, it's still a risk asset. And it's going to be a while before it really stabilizes into something that's considered a pure investment. But it's there, and it's growing, and people are learning more about it. The blockchain technology is probably the most valuable piece of that because it makes it easier for people to maintain a registry without having to worry about a single source keeping the records. So if you take a look at where Texas is in the banking system, Texas is currently about mid-tier in state credit quality. I'd say upper third in state credit quality. We are mid-tier in total borrowings of the state of Texas, and we're one of the few states that has a surplus. There are 11 states that have a surplus. We're one of those. But when you take a look at the total amount borrowed, we've got a ton of borrowed money. But we also have resources like the Permian Basin. We have oil, we have gas, we have granite, we have quarries, we have sand. We have all sorts of stuff that comes out of the earth that puts us in a good position to be able to pay off that debt. This type of depository allows us to collateralize that at a state level and not worry about what happens with national economies. I think Mr. Heger is a very smart guy. I don't know him personally, but I think that what he did is he set us up for a much more secure economic future, regardless of what's happening around the country or around the world. So, the technology revolution. Data centers. Does anybody have any experience in working with anybody in the data center business? So data centers are going to be a principal user of electricity and water because it takes a lot of water to keep a data center cool. Have any of y'all had if you get an opportunity, there are 4 major data centers around Houston. One is up near Greens Point. And if you get a chance to take a tour, go and take a tour. It is a huge facility with rows and rows and rows of rack space computers. And the amount of information that is carried and transmitted by that center every single day just boggles the mind. They have a graph in there that shows electronically how many transactions and how many pieces of information are going back and forth on a minute-by-minute basis. And this graph is on this big digital computer that shows you. And when you look at that and you see that at any one time, that data center is servicing 80 million people a second, it begins to sink in how big a requirement that is. If you take a look at electric usage, they probably soak up on a daily basis as much electricity as a population of 55,000 homes in one building. What does that mean to you and me? We're on a separate grid. Texas has its own grid. We're the only state that does that. If the data centers compete with bad weather, and we're going to have some this weekend, you may have rolling blackouts because all the data centers need electricity because they can't go down. They have generators, they have all this other stuff, but the state announced this morning that they have an extra 23 gigawatts of power that they can shift around if the freeze starts causing blackouts. The reason they have all that is they have to keep the data centers going. They're not as worried about me having an in-house temperature of 22, which means that my wife's temperature will probably be 200 that I don't have the generator running. But if you take a look at what they have to do, we have 433 current data centers. Take a look at the next slide. There are 443 data centers planned for construction within the next 2 years. Some of those have already started. Some of them are still just in the planning stage. So if you compare that to the other states around the country, in 2 years, Texas will have 60% more data capacity than any other state in the union, to include California. California can't keep up with us because they can't permit the power plants that are needed to provide the data center recovery. Our independent grid is also being secured. There are 15 companies with major contracts now to provide additional cybersecurity. That's one of the critical job shortages that we have is cybersecurity engineering and cybersecurity science. But Texas has contracted with 15 of the premier companies. Those are companies like CrowdStrike, GST, Global Guardian. These are companies that are hardening our power grid so that if there were major storms, if there was some type of attack by a third party, if there's an earthquake, anything, it will keep our grid up and running and be able to supply power. We have 130 new natural gas power plants either in construction or on the books to be built within the next 5 years. That's pretty big. Permian has the largest resource of natural gas. Fracking allows us to fund and keep all these things running. Texas has plans to shut down 2 more coal plants in the coming year, but I don't think we're going to shut them down. I think they've decided to change their path, keep those open, and then stack coal out there. One of the interesting things about coal is we can burn it a lot more cleanly than we used to be able to. And the British thermal units, which is the amount of heat that a lump of coal produces, are higher than natural gas or oil, anything but nuclear. But the neat thing about coal is you can put a lump of it out there and you can stack 100 million metric tons of coal, and in 250 years it still has the exact same British thermal unit power stored in it that it did the day you put it there. It doesn't lose. Natural gas will stay in the tank for 25 years and be good. Nuclear energy, you know, as long as you keep it shielded properly, it will be there 2,000 years from now. Natural gas, you have to transmit it, you have to get the lines, you have to ship it, you have to drill it, you have to frack it, you have to constantly renew the source. Coal is one of those things that I think people have realized, if we can burn it safely and if we can burn it cleanly, then it is an emergency store of power that we have in case there's a major emergency. So a few years ago when we had the ERCOT problems and Texas had blackouts, people froze. There were some people in the state that died because they couldn't get electricity, and can't have that. They took a new look at the coal plants, because if we had had the coal plants ready to go back online, they could have been up and cranked within 5 or 6 hours, burning the boilers and creating the energy shortage that we had. So I think what's going to happen is the coal plants that were slated to be closed are going to be left open with a skeleton crew. They're going to stockpile emergencies and stockpile an emergency reservoir of coal. And basically, if we need it, it's there. Natural gas can be turned on and off in 30 minutes. So if you have a natural gas plant that takes up 1 acre, you can turn those turbines on and have them producing at full speed in 30 minutes. It's a good system for us. And we've got so much natural gas between the Permian and the Sabine River that there's not a reason we shouldn't use it. There are expansions on existing plants. 17 expansions are planned. They are reactivating Nuclear Tower 2 at Glenrose. Do y'all know where Glenrose is? Granbury, Lake Granbury. It's up northwest of Austin, about an hour and a half northwest of Austin, about an hour southwest of Fort Worth. Beautiful place if you get a chance, probably one of the prettiest little towns in West Texas. But they have a nuclear power plant that was designed in 1971. And there was a leak in Tower 2 in 1980, and they shut that tower down and the plant ran at half capacity. And then they actually shut the plant down for about 10 years. The only reason I know some of those details is my father-in-law was one of the original engineers, and they've hired him to come back to help redesign the repair of Tower number 2, and they should have Tower number 2 up and running in about another 6 months. And to talk about technology, it was actually a joint research engineering facility working with U of H and with Texas A&M that designed a liquid metallic nanobot that places the concrete and the nanobots into a self-healing seal that is being used because you can't go in the reactor because it had a leak, so they closed it all down. And the internal reactor runs on something called an analog device. Do y'all know the difference between analog and digital? Anybody? So analog is, remember you have wind-up clocks, wind-up watches? In old cars, you have the speedometer that moves over. It's an actual dial. Now you see they're electric. Electric is digital. The old things that move based on motion, analog. The reason I say that is analog devices don't have to worry about electromagnetic pulse. They don't have to worry about earthquakes. They don't have to worry about a lot of things if they're shielded. So the equipment inside the reactor is all analog. It's 1972 chic. I mean, it's like shag carpet and dice on your windshield. I mean, it's great. The problem is that you try and run that with a digitalized computer and the metrics don't add up all the time. So what they've designed now is a new system that allows digital control with an analog emergency backup, but all of your original workings in the reactor don't have to be changed because the analog stuff didn't get old because it hadn't been used. So now they're going to work it with an old system with new equipment, and they can turn it on and off in about 2 hours, which is phenomenal for us if we have an emergency. Biomass and wood chips. So there are going to be 3 of those plants in Texas. That means that stuff that is biodegradable can be burned and create electricity instead of sitting in a landfill somewhere. And we will be the first in state quantum research, and that's primarily in Houston. So quantum computing, quantum technology research, U of H is going to be a big player in that. U of H and A&M are working together. The guys at UT can't get it together on that. They're not going to be good quantum guys. So here we are. We're going to talk about Y'all Street. So y'all know what Wall Street is. So Dallas is getting its own stock exchange. We're calling it Y'all Street. So this opened, it opened January 3rd on a limited basis in the first quarter. So initially it's going to be for ETFs, ETPs. Those are exchange-traded funds and exchange-traded partnerships and shared corporate listings. What that means is like ExxonMobil or Chevron, they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They're also going to list on Boston. They're also going to list on Dallas. It'll be like a tertiary market for the first half of the year. Singular corporate listings, that'll be if Exxon or Chevron wanted to be listed primary market in Dallas instead of New York, which little birds are telling me they're really looking at because the fees on the Dallas market are less than 10% of the fees on the New York Exchange. So they save more money, their shareholders get more dividend. So that's the second half of 26. Dual listed offerings and new IPOs, that's going to be critical. That's at year end of 26, beginning of 27. So Texas-based companies or Oklahoma or Louisiana, new companies, new startups that want to list on the market for capital raises, they'll be able to go to Dallas instead of New York. And they will be able to pay a much lower fee to get that done instead of New York fees. They will also not be under New York regulations. They will be under Dallas regulations, which the regulatory environment in Texas is about 20% of that in New York. That's why I put New York up on the loser thing with the 91,000 jobs. A lot of their market maker jobs will move here. There are firms in New York that have been there for 50, 60 years, employees that have been there for 50, 60 years. They're looking at houses in Dallas because they know that's going to be the future of their market. So we're going to pick up some of those people. That means we'll get better pizza and we'll get better Italian food and we will get a lot of really good new restaurants. But it also means that we will pick up a lot of capital, a lot of private money that will move here that has been traditionally traded in New York. That we'll probably start seeing an impact from that by mid-27. Means jobs, particularly in finance, in analytics, and in AI-related investment services. Because Dallas, the stock market, is powered by Schwab. Charles Schwab used to be in California. They have moved their headquarters to Fort Worth. They've moved their key employees to Fort Worth. Mr. Schwab, Chuck Schwab, still lives in California. But if you take a look at the amount of infrastructure that they have built into this and the trading platforms that they have, the technology that they have brought to Texas and the finance and banking world is light years ahead of where we were. And that's part of why JP Morgan has moved so many employees here. It's part of why Goldman has opened new branches. Bessemer Trust, which is the old blue blood Bessemer Trust that was too stuffy to ever be outside of the Northeast. They've opened 2 new big offices in Dallas and Fort Worth because of that. We're going to see state-of-the-art trading capacity, banking, and investment banking. So for years, Texas has been overlooked. We have some of the best money managers in the country and in the world, but because we weren't in New York or LA or San Francisco, we got overlooked. That's all changing with Schwab moving here and the Y'all Street transition. So capital for new startups will be flowing in here. Capital for existing companies that are expanding or doubling or tripling their size or making acquisitions, it'll be here. I think we're going to see a lot more. And the final part, state-of-the-art cybersecurity protection and compatibility. Cybersecurity is key in the finance world right now. And Verizon had a hiccup last week. Some of y'all's phone may have been down for a whole day.
Microsoft Outlook had something happen this morning.
Yep, there are going to be other outages, but if Verizon didn't send you a $20 credit or a $50 credit, depending on how many lines you have, you need to call them because they put that out. So if you got a credit, good. But if you didn't call them and say, where's my credit? My phone was down for 2/3 of a day. The thing that we're seeing is a lot of the companies that have been based in either DC, New York, or San Francisco, Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, they're moving here because they're following the money. And if you take a look at all of the Wall Street firms, the number one secure trading and secure information and secure asset account management system is actually Schwab. They moved here, they improved their services, they improved their cybersecurity, and they have built an entire new complex in the Fort Worth area. It's just going to attract more. Here are your top 20 growth. So Texas has 7 of the top 20 growth cities in the U.S. Now most of these you may not know where Leander is. That's just outside of Austin. Georgetown is up near Austin. Salina, Fulshear, west of Houston, just past Katy. Allen, Round Rock, and Frisco, south. These are the top 7 growing cities in the U.S. out of the top 20. If you take that list out to 30, Texas has 19. Last slide. So here are jobs that are growing by demand. Now this is Texas. A lot of these duplicate what the national needs are. So if you take a look at the list, and I'm not going to go through and read them all, I'm just going to call out a few. So if you notice, almost the entire first row is medical related. We've got the largest medical complex. Color me surprised, we have the largest need for people in medical technology fields. So then you get into software developer, computer support, and information security, and data science. These are not, I didn't group these by their group. These are the order of these things and what the critical infrastructure needs are. So when you have a city of roughly 8.5 million people, which is what the Metroplex of Houston is, you have specific needs. There are also some things in here, market research, heavy equipment operations, HVAC, mechanical, and then down in the bottom in the gray, turbine-related technical gas, wind, and aviation. So jet engines, turbine engines that run on natural gas, wind turbines, and turbines in energy production are all the same basic component. So that's a critical vocational skill. Those guys are in high demand right now. Management systems engineering, that's kind of an innocuous term, but that's somebody who uses computer systems to manage the engineered platforms that are running a factory, a building, a company. That could be a 4-year, it could be a master's, it could be an associate's. It depends on what level they're working that at. I will say that one of the surprises to me in actually looking at critical infrastructure jobs, and we look at it from banking reasons, is how many of y'all have been somewhere and you're trying to get on the elevator at a university or a building downtown, the elevator's out, and you've gone back to that building several times, the elevator's still out. Bingo. Does anybody have an idea how much a senior master tech elevator repair specialist makes?
$195,000.
Higher.
Higher? I don't know, y'all know?
Any guess? So if you're the guy with the highest level, you're the guy with the highest level of technology training and repairing high-rise elevators, you are probably making between $350 and $500 a year. Because there's so few people.
They have you booked out for 3 years?
Yeah, and the thing is, if that guy is working, when they start working on that elevator, the rule is that he has to be on site from start to finish. He can't leave the building if they've started the project until he has signed off that it is complete. He can't leave the car unattended. So basically he camps out in the building for 4 or 5 days, however long they're working on that particular elevator. So he goes, when he gets to 40 hours in a week, he goes to double time. When he gets to 70 hours, he goes to triple time. When he gets to 7 days, he goes to quadruple time.
Really?
On one project, yeah.
6 months out of the year.
So there's an elevator in the Chase Tower downtown that took 7 weeks to repair. So this guy who didn't turn a single screw or install a single component, but supervised the people doing it, got 7 solid days of camping for several weeks until they got this entire system completed. Now, are there dangers in the job? Yeah, you could fall 65 stories on the interior shaft. You know, you might miss a hookup. You might have an elevator drop on you while you're working on something because the brakes failed. But aside from that, you're well compensated. But there's a shortage. There's a shortage. And Houston has a huge shortage. The only place we can hire these guys from is other cities with tall buildings. So if we don't have it, we have to go to Atlanta or New York or New Jersey or one of the California cities to get these guys. And they're expensive because you got to relocate them. You got to relocate their family. That trade is in high demand. And there's only a certain number of people that have the preliminary to go get the additional master tech certificates. And usually it's by 1 or 2 companies. So there's Schindler, there's Kohler, there's Fuji Tech. You have to go get a certification in each one of the types that you're going to be eligible to repair. But that's just one of the trades. There's a bunch of trades out there. That's why when we go to rodeo, and I would recommend everyone this year go to rodeo. Got a good lineup. I'm on the board of directors, so I'm biased. But I also showed some livestock growing up, and Dr. Heidi has been there, and she had a great time. And when y'all get it, when Chris Bowman comes and speaks, he's a dynamic speaker. He's a lot of fun. He's funny. He's a PhD in agriculture. Don't let it fool you. He's brilliant. And he will talk about the economic impact. For those of y'all who, just as a side note, if the Super Bowl comes to Houston, the Super Bowl causes a one-time economic impact to our city of about $330 million. The rodeo causes an economic impact of $347 million every year in Houston. Every year. And we give away, this year we gave away $30 million in scholarships. We sent 2,700 people to 4-year degrees. We sent 400 people to technology and vocational degrees. We paid for 230 graduate assistantships and graduate degrees. And we paid for veterinary medical and medical research and PhD level 320 people to go to their PhD and MD level program. So very proud of our group. We have a tiny community of 35,632 volunteers, which saves us about, during the course of a 20-day show, that saves us about $22 million in payroll that we're able to pass back through. This year we're able to start vocational trade programs in 9 high schools so people can graduate with a certificate and go straight to work, whether they're going to go on to college or whether they're going to go to a trade school, a vocational school, they can go to work. And then we paid for 230 charities with grants from $5,000 to $150,000, doing everything from helping people with spinal cranial injuries to people that are mentally challenged to people who have chronic health disorders. So that's just some of the stuff. I sit on the Policies and Grants Committee, sat on the Scholarship Committee for years, and proud of what the organization does. I recommend everybody take a day, go out there. It's just you and 160,000 of your closest friends for the whole day. And then, go to the concert if you want to, go see the rodeo, but go see everything that's on the grounds. You'll be impressed. Everybody out there is working for one common goal, to get people through education and to get people to the next level in their life.